r/paranormal encounters, Tails likes Jay-Z. This happened around 2008 when PS2 wasn't quite prehistoric, but was kind of considered vintage at the time. I'm a big fan of Sonic, so I had purchased and used Verison of Sonic Mega Collection from GameStop. If some of you guys are familiar with creepypastas, then you should kind of already know how this story is going to go. Proceeding on. As soon as I got back home, I turned on my stereo, put in my Jay-Z Blueprint album that was one of my fave albums, and excitedly put the Sonic Collection disc into the PS2. I waited intently as the game loaded, while Jay-Z played in the background. After it finished loading, I immediately went to my favorite Sonic game, Sonic 2. In this particular version of Sonic, you can play Tails as the main character, so I played as Tails. All was well. I was enjoying the game and the music, until Tails started to have a slight malfunction. His moves were becoming delayed, and I couldn't really control him. He started to sort of move to the beat of Jay-Z's song, You Don't Know. As the song continued to play, I completely lost control of Tails. If you know this song, then imagine Tails moving up and down to the beat. It looked like he was bobbing his head to it. Periodically Tails would move side to side, and he was doing all this on his own. I was more fascinated than scared. I felt like I was experiencing some sort of weird paranormal event. Tails continued to do his little dance routine until the track ended. He didn't dance to any other track, so I assumed Tails only liked that one song. I got a bit curious, so I turned the music off and thought communicating with whatever entity would be intriguing. I started to ask Tails yes/no questions. How he'd respond would be up and down for yes and side to side for no. I asked if the entity was a boy. I received a side-to-side motion, so it was a girl. I asked if she was an adult. I got the up and down motion. I then asked if she passed in my apartment. She gave me the up and down motion. Again, I felt chills run across my body. I asked her, was she alive by someone in my apartment? Side-to-side motion. I then asked, was it from natural causes? Side-to-side motion. Again, thought about the next question that I was about to ask with a slight hesitation. I finally asked, did she commit self-deletion? Tails stared at me blankly for a while, then gave me the up and down motion. My fascination soon turned into grief, and my heart sunk deep into my chest. After RQ and a session, there was a loud explosion from outside, and all the power went out. I quickly ran out of my apartment only to find that my neighbor's lights were out as well. A nearby transformer suddenly exploded. Knowing that gave me no kind of comfort. I was so disturbed about my recent experience that I decided to sit at one of my neighbor's house until the power was restored. Needless to say, I didn't touch my PS2 ever again after that. One user replied, interesting. I'm a big believer, but I'm 50/50ths on this one. To which OP replied, I know. I understand. What really sucks about this? I don't have a video to prove my claim. The user then replied, it's almost like a digital Ouija board. I doubt it's impossible for something like this to happen, as I'm sure there have been numerous instances of spirits communicating through TVS games. Like the static channels on older TVS, they were used sometimes for spirits to come through. OP then replied, yeah, it was a weird and different type of experience for me. A spirit never reached out to me before through a video game. I guess technology just gives spirits more advanced ways to communicate with the living now. r/glitch in the Matrix. My husband's car answered his question. I've had many unexplainable occurrences throughout my life, but a couple weeks ago I had my very first glitch in the Matrix type event. What makes this one so amazing is that my husband was there for the whole thing, otherwise I might have written it off as my lizard brain deceiving me once again. My husband is a car guy, and he is very meticulous about how he operates his cars. He has all these little gadgets and doodads, rotary dirters and what have you, so when he starts his car, he turns the key forward and lets all the electrical stuff start up before fully turning the key to start the engine. It probably only takes 4 seconds total, and yes, this is important. So we hop in the car one warm Saturday morning to go get all the goods for a giant breakfast feast. As he's turning the key over in his slow, weird way, he says out loud, "Did I bring my sunglasses?" And without skipping a beat, his car, in her car voice, says, "You did," just like she was answering his question. We both just looked at each other in shock for a second before confirming that we each heard the same thing. He looked down and saw his sunglasses sitting in the upholder, so she was right too. By then he had fully started the engine, but his phone had no time to connect, and why would it answer his question anyways? His car has but on the steering wheel that make it speak SOT. He pressed the button and sure enough, that's his car's voice. My husband is a no-nonsense military man who doesn't like to think or talk about these types of things. We have had paranormal experiences that forced him to acknowledge that this stuff happens, but he would rather pretend it doesn't exist. I'm sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum, and I was super excited about the whole thing. Like, if one of you has a plausible explanation, I'm going to be disappointed as hell because I love this stuff, but anywho, that's my story. Thanks for reading, and sorry I'm on mobile. r/high strangeness. My stepfather saw something strange in Mexico we can't explain. So, the way this conversation came about was due to my stepdad sitting down and watching a movie with my little sister. They were watching Spider-Man No Way Home when I stepped into the living room. The scene where Ned uses the Doctor Strange spell to call for the other Spider-Mans pops up. That's when my stepdad tells me that he had seen that before. I ask him what he means and he says that he's seen that portal thing before. I'm confused as to what he means, and he says that the thing the guys are using to move from place to place, he had seen it before. Except, the one he saw was smaller and was solid purple on the inside, with a yellow perimeter, but now fireworks like the one used in the Marvel movies. At this point, I'm still confused and I ask him to elaborate. My stepdad is from Mexico, specifically the state of Guerrero. I won't tell you which pueblo, but it's remote and its populace is substantially indigenous and brown. My stepdad was around 9 to 12 years old when this happened. At that point, he had already been working with his father. They would help build small houses, build walls, and help remove debris from construction. One day, my stepdad was bringing a wheelbarrow of cement to the work site. His dad and a bunch of other guys were building the walls of a new building of a large ranch and were layering bricks. As my stepdad was bringing up the barrel, he ended up falling and causing the cement to spill. His father, being the piece of S that he is, went up to my stepdad and slapped the S out of him for spilling it. He told my stepdad to get the F out before he F's up again. My stepdad, now crying and bleeding, ran away onto the opposite side of the worksite. He ran into a small shed that had a bench along the wall. This shed was around 12 feet by 12. On the inside of the shed was a bench that leaned against the wall. This was at the very front of the shed, perpendicular to the door, meaning that when my stepdad sat down on said bench, his back would lean onto the wall, while the opposite wall was in front of him. To his left was the singular entrance, and to his right was the rest of the shed. The rest of the shed had other wheelbarrows, bricks, and tools that any other shed would have. My stepdad said that he sat down at the edge of the bench in order to cry. As he was crying, he noticed a magazine on the ground. He says it was some type of car magazine, and he started to look through it. As he's combing through the pictures, he says that he feels that something is off. He can't put his finger on it, but he thinks it's coming from his right-hand side. He looks to his right and just sees all the extra tools at the back of the shed. He keeps staring, but there's nothing there. He goes back to looking at the magazine when he gets the feeling again. This time though, instead of looking into the far end of the shed, he looked slightly to the right of his shoulder ... and that's when he saw it. He said he sees this purple hole ... on the wall. The same wall he's leaning on while sitting on the bench. He says it's completely purple, except for the ring perimeter of the hole. He says it was as if someone stuck a large circular purple sticker, with a yellow outline, on the wall that he's leaning on while sitting on this bench. He said if he could estimate, it was probably around 3 feet in diameter. He said that his right shoulder was no more than 5 or 6 inches from the perimeter of this hole. He leans over, still sitting on this bench, and tries to look into this hole. Then, I kid you not, he says that a man's head and half torso pops out of this hole/portal. He says that this man sticks his head out of the hole and faces the opposite wall across from my stepdad. He says the man then turns to his side and is now staring at my stepdad. He says that this dude's eyes were scared, as if he was surprised and scared that my stepdad could see him. My stepdad says that the guy looked at him, eyes wide open, and then just went back into the whole portal. He says the man never got out. He just stuck his head and half his torso out of that hole. Imagine the headshot image that you usually see on resumes or state ID, except now, turn it to the side. That's how this guy stuck out of that portal. My stepdad says that when the man went back into the hole just faded away. Like, just faded away. No sound, no smell, no nothing. My stepdad freaked the F out and ran straight to his father and told him everything. His dad asked him if the man harmed him in any way, and my stepdad said no. He then asks if it was any of the guys that they work with. He says no. The dad and some of the crew start running straight for the shed and looking for this dude. They take all the tools out and everything, looking for this guy. When my stepdad explained that this dude came out of a hole in the wall, the men and his dad started checking the walls for holes but found nothing. My stepdad's father gets angry and thinks that my stepdad is just messing with him, and he hits my stepdad again. He makes my stepdad leave and walk the 3 miles home by himself. Here's the weirdest aspect of the whole story though. When I asked my stepdad what the man looked like, he said that it was a weirdo. When he said that, I thought he meant a light-skinned dude, but no, he said the guy was white. The guy that came out of this hole/portal was a blonde, blue-eyed, mid to late 30s-year-old white guy. He says the man was skinny and he was wearing a light blue t-shirt, or at least, that's what my stepdad saw, as this dude popped only around half his shoulder length out of the hole. I showed him a bunch of images of blonde guys, and he says that the guy most resembled was that of those skinny blonde surfer guys that you see on TV. My stepdad claims that this was the first white person he had ever seen in real life. He said the next one would be a woman that he would see in Mexico City almost 15 years later when he was on his way to the border in order to immigrate. But this is expected as Mexico City has many white residents as well as European tourists. He said that they didn't have any television in his home, but some of the businesses did, and he had seen white people plenty of times on television before at that point, but never €1, not until that day. One user replied, "My dad's from the north of Mexico, and he says he saw a flying motorcycle kind of vehicle when he was a kid. He says he was at the rooftop and it hovered like 6 feet above him. Then 2 heads looked down on him and it disappeared into nothing. R/glitch in the Matrix. Saw cartoon versions of my future children projected on my bedroom wall when I was around 7. One night I was in bed, which was up against the wall lengthwise. I happened to notice a small circular beam of bright light on the wall. It expanded in size outward just like how an old movie projector would until the screen was about 5 by 7 inches. Even though the lights were off, I was wide awake, and after a second or two, a smiling young dark-haired cartoon-type boy walked up to a cartoon-type swing set. Then a younger cartoon-type girl with extraordinary long light hair and braids walked up to the boy. At first he teased her because she was too small to get on the swing herself. So he then helped her up on it, and then proceeded to push her. They were both laughing, just having fun. The whole silent scene lasted about a good minute or two, and then it faded out the way it appeared. I was so scared, but when I ran to tell my parents, they told me it was just a dream, but I knew what I saw. I still believe the experience was maybe a bit prophetic, and maybe it was no more than a small cosmic window opened up in a fun, gentle way to show me the future. Especially since after I got married in my early 30s, I ended up having 2 kids and my dark-haired son, who still is a lot of fun and, although very kind, still loves to tease his younger sister. My daughter, who was known for her extraordinary long hair even as a very young child, one of their favorite activities was playing on their backyard swing set. My parents chalked up my story to just a dream, but even in my 7-year-old mind, I knew it was a factual event. It wasn't a waking dream or lucid dreaming. Of that I am sure. Why? Because even to this day in 2018, I can still recall every single nuance of what I saw on my bedroom wall that one summer night in 1958. One user replied, "What a great story. I believe you." When my oldest daughter was around 1, I had a dream of 2 girls walking by the pool of a hotel. One was short with dark hair and the other was very tall with long blonde hair. I was seeing them from above, looking down on them. I can see a fence around the pool, lounge chairs, and a parking lot to the right. Anyway, now I have 3 grown daughters. 2 are very short with dark hair and 1 is taller than my husband and I with long blonde hair almost to her knees, like Rapunzel. I have never told anyone this, not even my husband. If we ever stay at a hotel, you better believe that I check the layout of the hotel, pool, parking lot, and elevators. I also had a dream that God or someone told me what to name my daughter with the very long blonde hair. Not a name would have chosen, but I woke up and asked my husband, what do you think of this name for our next child? I never told him about the dream. He said he liked it, and that's what we named her. We never even considered another name. I have always wondered, was this a way to keep her safe? Sounds insane, I know. r/paranormal, faceless river ghost. This happened back in the 80s. My best friend and I were wandering around the neighborhood in the afternoon, and we came to a short bridge that went over a small creek. We looked over the rail and saw this kid crouched on a big flat stone at the edge of the creek, poking around in the water with a stick. He was wearing a red hoodie with the hood up, blue jeans, and white high-top sneakers. I couldn't help but notice how incredibly clean his clothes and shoes looked. Well, we thought it would be funny to drop a rock in the water and splash him, seeing that didn't seem to know we were there. Then he just looked up at us, didn't stand up or anything, just calmly turned his head and looked right at us. His face was pure white and perfectly smooth like an egg or something. No features at all. The fear we felt at his gaze was instant and intense. We ran like hell for about 2 blocks, and after that day we never talked about it again. About a year later, I was hanging out with some other guys riding bikes, and another friend came running up out of breath and freaked out. Started describing the exact same faceless kid doing the same exact thing but at a different spot along the river. I just kind of froze over, but everyone else was just making fun of him. I looked at him and just asked, "Super clean looking." He just went silent. I wonder if anyone else has seen this thing. r/glitch in the Matrix. Have you ever heard a song years before it came out? I once wrote a song, mostly just had the melody written out. I heard it note for note in a beer commercial a few years later. Something very similar happened to me, except the song was Don't Let Me Down by the Chainsmokers. I had been writing a song a few months before it was released. I didn't add any lyrics, but the melody was almost spot on except for a few other parts. I dreamed a girl I didn't yet know showed me a song I didn't know on some green internet service I didn't know. I didn't much like it and woke up. This was 2011, and I remember I looked up the lyrics on our high school PCs that day, slacking off from schoolwork. No close match for the lyrics, I remembered. 2017, a new friend I'd recently made in college showed me This Is Gospel by Panic at the Disco on Spotify. I still didn't much care for it, but we talked about what other music we like, while I was internally freaked out by the Deja Vu. Song came out 2013 or so. I knew nothing of Spotify. I had never met the girl before 2017. r/glitch in the Matrix. Weirdo at Barnes and Noble. I usually don't post on here, however yesterday I had a strange experience at Barnes and Noble. I was wandering around looking for any books that would catch my attention. I stopped at the vinyl section just to see what was new. This very nice lady came and stood next to me. Had seen her around the store, and we have even made eye contact a couple of times. She just stood there staring at me. I became a little weirded out and inched a little further away down the table display. She followed. I looked up and smiled at her. I figured maybe she thought I worked there. I'm in there enough to make it seem that way. The lady just stood there looking at me for a second, then blurted out the most random comment to start a conversation. She said, "I like your pants," in what sounded like an uncomfortable forced voice. I replied with an awkward thanks and attempted to walk to the other side of the media room. She followed. Turned once again, look at her, and she blurted out that she had been waiting her whole life to meet me. Mind you, I'm 23. This lady have visible wrinkles and a few strands of gray hair. She was definitely older than me. I repeated her words to her out loud, questioning the her whole life part. She just ignored it and continued to tell me things like you'll do great things. She knew things about my childhood and just random odd facts. Anytime I'd ask her anything, she would ignore it and cut me off. She knew about my old house in the more ghetto area of the state. She knew my first pet's name and how they passed. After about 3 minutes of talking to me, she looked at her watch, said she was late, and walked off into the book displays. I tried to follow, but when I turned into the classic literature aisle, she was gone. I have no idea what just happened. I don't even know her name, but she knows mine and things about me that I don't really talk about. I don't know how to even rationalize any of it. Have any of you had something like this happen? I'm secretly hoping it was just a bad joke, but I don't know. Either way, I'm spooked. Thank you all for watching. I spent all day editing and finding good stories for this video, so I hope you all enjoyed it. I was going to add more stories, but I'll be adding them in my next video. Please leave a like, comment, and/or share this video with your friends, and please subscribe for more content like this in the future. Until next time, the Ellie Ghost.